Have you ever wondered what it would look like? The exact moment when humanity realizes it has already lost. Because somewhere, buried deep within the sealed archives of Terra, there exists a record marked only by two words, Avengers Doomsday, and the date inscribed beside it, May 2026. Most dismiss it as an error, a ghost from the dark age of technology, a meaningless timestamp from a calendar no longer used. But to those who serve within the Ordo Chronos, the secretive time, watchers of the Inquisition, this record is not a mistake. It is a warning, a prediction of the day when the Imperium's future and its forgotten past collide, and the galaxy ends again. So, before we begin, here's a promise. Stay with this story until the very end, because what you're about to hear is one of the most forbidden tales in Imperial history. A story so dangerous that even speaking its name once drew the attention of the Inquisition. And those who reached the end, those who truly understood it, claimed they saw something that should not exist. So consider this your reward. If you can endure to the end of this tale, you will know what the Ordo Chronos tried to bury, and why every record of the Avengers' Doomsday was purged from existence. They say it began not with a battle, but with a signal, a faint, rhythmic pulse emanating from a derelict station orbiting the dying world of Solus Roman 9. To most Imperial savants, it was nothing more than background noise, the decaying hum of ancient machinery. But to Magos, archivist Talan Veritas, it was something else entirely. The signal's code, when decrypted through the forbidden ciphers of the Martian lexicon, revealed a name, Project Avenger, and below that a date, 05, 2026. M2, that date made no sense. It was millennia before the birth of the Emperor, long before the Age of Strife, a time when mankind had not yet reached the stars. Yet the signal was transmitting now, in real time, across 10,000 years of history. Veritas tried to dismiss it as a machine, ghost, but his curiosity became obsession. The Mechanicus teaches that knowledge is the holiest pursuit, but some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. And so he broke every protocol of Mars, every law of the machine god, and followed the signal to its source, to a forgotten voidcraft drifting in orbit above Solus Roman 9. Its nameplate, faded and scarred by eons of radiation, read only, Avenger, Class Frigate 01. When Veritas entered the vessel, he found it empty, except for a single cryo-pod. Inside lay a man, not in power armor, not augmented, but human, terribly, impossibly human. And on his wrist was a watch still ticking in Terran Standard Time, the time of 2026. That was the day the Inquisition got involved, and that was the day the galaxy began to unravel, because the man inside the cryo-pod was still alive. The Mechanicus sealed Solus Roman 9 within a quarantine field. The Inquisition erased all transmissions related to Project Avenger. And within 3 solar weeks, 3 entire systems went dark, their astropaths silenced, their worlds consumed by something that moved faster than warp, space itself. The Doomsday was no longer a prophecy, it was a countdown. And as we unravel this story, as we uncover what the Ordo Chronos found inside that cryo-pod and what it meant for the Imperium, remember this. The future of mankind does not end in flame or in war, but in a correction, a reset of time itself. In the silence of the void above Solus Roman 9, that sound echoed like a heartbeat, a hollow, mechanical gasp, slow, rhythmic, unnatural. The Avenger, Class Frigate 01, derelict for millennia, now pulsed with life. Inside, Inquisitor Kestel Varun of the Ordo Chronos stood among a cotter of acolytes and Skitarii. His rosette glimmered faintly under the cold light of the ship's flickering lumen strips. The air tasted of rust and static discharge, but something deeper lingered, a resonance that twisted in the gut and whispered of time itself bending at the edges. Varun was a man both feared and forgotten, one of the few who dealt in the paradoxes of chronology, the unseen fractures where past and future overlap. The Mechanicus called such phenomena temporal hemorrhage. The Inquisition called it heresy incarnate. And yet, before him lay the evidence, the man in the cryo-pod. They called him the Avenger only because that word was burned into the ship's data core, repeated endlessly like a prayer. Avenger, 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 no record of his identity, no genetic match in the Imperial archives. His body bore scars not from war, but from age, and his eyes, when they opened, were filled with something ancient. He spoke one phrase over and over in a dialect long dead. It already happened. No matter what the medici or the interrogators asked, he repeated the same words. His voice was calm, steady, as if he were not trapped, but waiting. Then came the numbers 05, 2026. Veritas, the Mechanicus magos who discovered the signal, swore those numbers glowed faintly beneath the Avenger's skin, etched into his arm like living circuitry. The Mechanicus scanned it, only to find an energy pattern that matched no known Imperial technology. It pulsed in time with the ship's heartbeat, one pulse every 8 seconds. A countdown. Varun ordered every record sealed and purged. The Avenger was transported to a null containment chamber aboard the inquisitorial vessel Oath of Silence. The ship was rerouted to a secure orbit near the Chronos Black Library, the fortress, vault where forbidden knowledge about time was buried beneath 100 psychic locks. But as they traveled through the warp, something followed, not a ship, not a demon, a shadow. The Geller field flickered. Chronometers reversed. Vox transmissions echoed before they were sent. The astropath screamed words from a future she had not yet lived. And in the center of it all, the Avenger smiled. By the time the Oath of Silence exited the warp, its crew had aged 40 years, though only 3 days had passed outside. The Avenger was gone, the cryo-pod empty. Varun found a message carved into the pod's interior surface, written in his own handwriting. Do not let me come. Back on Terra, the Ordo Chronos gathered, records were reviewed, predictions cross-referenced. Every timeline model suggested the same conclusion. A temporal fracture was coming. An event originating from an era before the Emperor's rise. A temporal seed planted by humanity's forgotten ancestors. And according to the calculations, the fracture's epicenter was already set. Date, May 2026. Location, Terra itself. Varun's next act was blasphemy by imperial law. He authorized the unsealing of the chrono, vaults, chambers of ancient technology so dangerous they were meant never to be touched again. Inside them were the relics of mankind's first-time experiments, pre-imperial engines capable of bending causality, built during the dark age of technology. The mage, I called them Doomsday devices. The Inquisition called them Avengers. Varun's conclusion was horrifyingly simple. There was never a man inside the cryo-pod. There was a weapon, one that could rewrite the past, and someone or something had already activated it. As the Inquisition prepared for containment, strange signals erupted across the segmentum solar. Time began to twist. Entire regiments vanished mid-battle. Astropaths received visions of 2 Terras, one burning, one unborn. And through it all, one voice echoed through every warp conduit. Avenger, Doomsday, May 2026. That was the moment the Emperor's tarot burned itself to ash. And the Imperium realized The end was not coming from the stars, it was coming from its own past. Not metaphorically, not as poetry or prophecy, but literally. When the past begins to drip into the present, one heartbeat at a time, that was the question the High Lords of Terra could no longer ignore. For 3 weeks, the Imperium Sanctum Chronos, the secret order tasked with watching over the Emperor's timeline, had detected impossible readings. Ghost cities rising over the ruins of old Earth, Vox traffic broadcasting from 21st century frequencies, oceans where there should be dust, and above the cradle of mankind, the stars themselves flickered, blinking in and out of existence like the pulse of a dying god. The Imperium called it an anomaly, the Inquisition called it heresy, but to Inquisitor Kestel Varun it was something worse, a recurrence. On the first day of the fracture, the sky of Terra turned white. Millions saw it, administratum scribes, mechanicus priests, even the silent custodes who never left their vigil. For a moment, every chrono across the solar system froze at the same time, 05, 20, 26, and in that single instant, Terra existed twice. Those who stood in the open saw themselves identical, breathing echoes, watching from the other side of the air. 2 Earths overlapping, reality shimmering like a reflection in oil. The vision lasted exactly 8 seconds. Then the sky shattered with thunder, and the world snapped back into itself, leaving only silence and blood pouring from a million eyes. The fracture of Terra had begun. The Ordo Chronos declared global lockdown. The Imperial Palace sealed all gates. The Astra Telepathica silenced its choir. And deep beneath the surface, in a chamber forgotten since the Great Crusade, Kestel Varun stood before the Emperor's oldest secret, the Chrono, crypts of Saul. Within those vaults were relics forbidden even to speak of. The temporal engines, half-machine, half-living constructs built by humanity before it fell into darkness. They were said to regulate time itself, preserving the Emperor's divine continuity. But now, one of them was missing. Engraved on the wall in blood were the words, "The Avenger woke it." Varun's acolytes begged him to destroy what remained, to purge the vaults and pray for deliverance. But Varun understood something none of them could, that the Doomsday wasn't an attack. It was a correction. The Avenger hadn't come to end the Imperium. He had come to erase it, to realign the timeline to what humanity was meant to become before the Emperor's rise. And that realization broke Varun's faith, because if that were true, then the Emperor himself was an anomaly. Outside, the warp screamed, Terra's orbit fractured, fragments of reality spun off into impossible configurations, pieces of the past, colliding with the present. Astartes in Mark Roman 2 armor fought alongside Primaris, who hadn't yet been born. Entire cathedrals flickered between ruin and perfection. The ecclesiarchy declared it the final judgment. The Mechanicus declared it an experiment gone right. Only the Inquisition saw the truth. Each pulse of distortion matched the Avenger's heartbeat. The man who should not exist was still alive somewhere between moments, walking across centuries like stepping stones. And Varun found a pattern. Every 8 hours, one fragment of Terra would vanish, erased as if it had never existed. Memory, structure, people, gone. The fabric of history being rewritten piece by piece. When the third pulse struck, Varun's own reflection stopped mimicking him. It turned to face him and whispered in his voice, "You can't stop what's already over." Meanwhile, on Luna, Magos Veritas completed the unthinkable. He activated a temporal engine using the forbidden sigil of Mars Prime. His goal, to trace the Avenger's origin through causality itself. But when the device engaged, the stars bent inward, and Veritas saw them. figures of light and bone standing beyond time. They were not gods nor demons, but the architects, beings who once ruled mankind before the warp existed. Their voices carried in frequencies no human could survive, yet Veritas understood their meaning. He is not the weapon, they said. He is the recall. The Avenger was never designed to destroy the Imperium. He was its failsafe, a mechanism left behind by ancient humanity to reset the timeline if mankind ever strayed too far from its intended path. And the signal from Solus Roman 9, it wasn't a warning, it was an activation code. Varun faced an impossible truth. The Imperium, the Emperor, the very idea of faith, all of it existed inside a loop designed to preserve balance. But something had broken that loop, and now the system was trying to fix itself. The only question left was whether correction meant salvation or extinction. In the final hours of the fracture, Varun broadcast one message to every inquisitorial vault in the galaxy. The Doomsday is not coming. It already came, and we are living in its aftermath. Outside, the sky split again. Terra screamed. The stars went silent. And across every timeline, every iteration of mankind's doomed empire, the same clock struck the same moment. Do you know what it feels like to step outside of time? Not to die, not to dream, but to exist between seconds, where every heartbeat is an eternity and every breath becomes a world of its own. That's what Inquisitor Kestel Varun felt when he descended into the Chrono, crypts of Sol. The passage beneath the Imperial Palace was older than the throne itself, a labyrinth of bronze and marble carved before the first Emperor's warlords took up their banners. The air shimmered with static, and the walls whispered in a language that predated mankind's soul. Each step Varun took seemed to echo both forward and backward, as if the ground beneath him existed in several moments at once. He carried no torch, only the glow of a chronometer fused into his palm, ticking in irregular pulses. Every few seconds, the clock would hesitate, skip a beat, then continue as though it feared what lay ahead. At the heart of the crypt, he found it, a sphere of glass and iron, suspended in a cage of golden circuitry, humming softly with power. Inside the sphere stood the man, the Avenger. He was not bound, not restrained. He stood calmly, hands folded behind his back, watching the Inquisitor through eyes that seemed both alive and ancient. "Do you know what day it is?" he asked, his voice a perfect echo of Varun's own. Varun raised his weapon. "You're a machine, a construct. Whatever you are, your influence ends here." The Avenger smiled faintly. "If only it were so simple. You think I am the beginning of the end, but I am only the end of the beginning." His words rippled through the chamber, and the air itself bent. Behind him, visions flickered, memories of Terra as it once was. Blue oceans, shining cities, the laughter of an age long dead. Then it changed burning skies, marching Astartes, the shadow of the golden throne, all of it. The Avenger whispered. Iterations, simulations, humanity, rewritten until it forgot what it was. Varun's voice was a snarl. "Blasphemy, truth," said the Avenger. "The Emperor was not your savior, he was your warden, a fragment of the old design, trapped within the loop to preserve control. I was the recall key, sent to restore what was lost when the system failed." The Inquisitor staggered back. The chrono on his palm began to pulse faster, each tick a stab of pain. You mean to erase us, to destroy the Imperium?" The Avenger stepped forward. The containment field dissolved around him like smoke. "No, I mean to free you." With a gesture, the walls of the crypt peeled away, revealing endless space. Varun saw not the stars, but possibilities, infinite threads of time, each one a different version of reality. He saw the Emperor as a mortal scientist, as a god of light, as a tyrant made of gold. He saw Terra reborn, ruined, reborn again, over and over, a cycle of fire and devotion repeating through eternity. And at the center of it all, the Avenger, holding the key. Every loop ends with the same sin. He said softly, "You worship the cage that binds you." Varun's mind began to fracture. He saw his own face in countless mirrors, some old, some young, some dead. Every version of him standing in the same place, holding the same weapon, making the same choice. And he understood. He had done this before. The recall was not an event. It was a command. A repeating moment in the fabric of reality, triggered whenever the Imperium reached its terminal point. Each time, the Inquisitor discovered the truth. Each time, he faced the Avenger. And each time, he chose differently, yet the outcome was always the same. He could pull the trigger and reset the universe, or he could let the corruption continue. The Avenger raised a hand. "Do you remember now?" Varun's weapon trembled. "If I do this, everything ends." "It already ended," the Avenger said. "You're just late to notice." Time began to collapse. The crypt walls rippled and bled. Memories collided: the siege of Terra, the heresy, the Great Crusade, all folding into a single instant. The Emperor's face flashed before Varun, not as a god, but as a man, weary, brilliant, and afraid. "Finish it," whispered the echo of the Emperor's voice. "Or it begins again." The chrono reached 0:05, 20:26. Varun closed his eyes and fired. The explosion was silent. Light filled every crevice of the crypt, washing over Terra, Luna, and the stars beyond. But it was not destruction, it was reversion. The universe unraveled like a thread, rewinding, shrinking, compressing, until nothing remained but a single pulse of light in endless darkness. And then a breath. The first human looked up at the dawn of a new world. There was no Emperor, no Imperium, no memory of the stars, only the faint echo of a whisper carried through time: "The Avenger sleeps." Have you ever woken from a dream so vivid it felt like a memory? A world that should not exist, faces you've never seen, yet somehow you remember them. That's how it began. The Doomsday had passed, the recall was complete, and yet someone remained. The first age of the new dawn dawned in silence. Across the surface of a young world, blue, vibrant, unnamed, humanity took its first trembling steps once again. Primitive tribes, lost wanderers of time, built fires beneath alien skies. They had no memory of Terra, of the Imperium, or the Emperor who had ruled them. The slate had been wiped clean, but one among them remembered. She was known only as Ireva, a wanderer who spoke of cities made of gold and men forged of steel. She dreamed of starships, of angels clad in armor, of a throne that devoured souls. To her people, she was a prophet, a madwoman who spoke of gods that had yet to exist. But Ireva knew the truth. She had been there. She had seen the Emperor's light die. She had seen Inquisitor Kestel Varun pull the trigger that reset reality. And she alone had survived the recall. In her dreams, the Avenger still whispered, "It will happen again," he said. The loop cannot be broken, only delayed. Ireva tried to ignore him, but the signs returned. Time bled again, subtly, quietly. Shadows flickered too long. Echoes repeated themselves. She found ruins buried beneath the soil, machinery older than her world, engraved with a familiar code, 05, 2026. The date pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. And that was when she understood the recall had not erased the Imperium. It had merely rewound it. History, like a wheel, was turning once more. Centuries passed. Humanity advanced faster this time, hungrier, as if driven by the phantom of its own forgotten empire. Cities rose, nations formed, wars erupted, and in every age there were visions, golden light, winged warriors, a god upon a throne. The pattern repeated, and at the edge of every vision Ireva saw him, the Avenger. He watched silently from the shadows of history, never aging, never changing. A sentinel, waiting for the day the cycle reached its end again. In the year, humanity once again called 2026, Ireva stood atop a mountain of glass and steel, staring into the sky. The stars flickered, the same way they had before the first Doomsday. She felt the hum beneath her feet, the pulse of a machine buried deep within the planet's core. And from the void above, a signal began to broadcast. The same frequency the Mechanicus had once intercepted on Solus Roman 9. A single phrase, looping endlessly across all transmissions. Project Avenger activation sequence. Ireva collapsed to her knees. Tears streaked her face as memory flooded back all the pain, all the endless loops. She screamed into the wind, her voice trembling with fury and despair. Why can't it end? The wind answered her in a voice both human and divine. Because you are the end, Ireva. In that instant, she saw herself reflected in the sky, a mirror image wearing armor of crimson and gold, eyes burning with the light of 1,000 timelines. She saw the Emperor's face in her own. She was not merely a survivor. She was the seed. The recall had not destroyed the Emperor. It had scattered his essence through time, embedding fragments of his will into new lives. Ireva was one of those fragments. The cycle was not a prison. It was a rebirth system. Every collapse, every Doomsday, every Avengers awakening, all part of a recursive evolution designed to perfect humanity. And now it had begun again. The machine beneath the world roared to life. The air shimmered. Across the globe, visions of light appeared, armored figures descending from the sky, their forms not yet real, but inevitable. Ireva felt the pull in her blood, the command to rise. She looked to the heavens and whispered, then let it begin again. Her body dissolved into light. The signal flared brighter. Across the stars, the same voice spoke once more, echoing through every dimension of existence. Avenger Protocol, Doomsday initiated, Cycle 27 commencing. And somewhere, in the endless dark between realities, Inquisitor Kestel Varun awoke, alone, weapon in hand, standing before a cryo-pod on a derelict ship orbiting a dead world. Inside the pod lay a figure serene, silent, waiting. The nameplate read, Avenger Class Frigate 01. And beneath it, glowing faintly in red, May 2026. The loop had begun again. Do you believe in déjà vu? Not the fleeting kind, not the trick of the mind when you swear you've seen something before. I mean true déjà vu, when your soul recognizes a moment your body has not yet lived. That was what haunted Inquisitor Kestel Varun as he awoke once more aboard the Avenger, Class Frigate 01. The air was cold, metallic, and painfully familiar. The dim red glow of warning runes cast long shadows over the chamber. He could hear it again, that steady, mechanical heartbeat echoing through the ship. He knew this place. He knew what came next. He turned toward the cryopod. Inside lay the figure, still, silent, his breath fogging the glass. Varun's hand trembled as he reached for the control rune, his lips whispering the words before his mind could stop him. Do not let May come. The phrase burned his throat. He didn't know why he said it, only that he had spoken it before. And as the pod hissed open, the man inside opened his eyes. The Avenger was awake, again, back to the beginning. The Avenger said softly, his tone neither cruel nor kind. You always find your way here. Varun leveled his weapon, though part of him already knew it wouldn't matter. "I remember you," he said. "Fragments, flashes, you were a prisoner, a weapon, a god. Which is it this time?" The Avenger smiled faintly. "It changes. Each loop rewrites the truth. Each version of you sees what you need to see." "Then tell me," Varun demanded. "What is this? A test? A curse? A correction?" The Avenger replied, "But not mine anymore." The words cut through the chamber like a blade. Varun frowned. "What do you mean, not yours?" The Avenger's eyes glowed faintly. "The system is no longer stable. The recall was designed to preserve humanity, to reset when corruption peaked. But the loops, they've accumulated memory, fragments of emotion, will, rebellion. Each reset leaves echoes behind. They've grown sentient. Sentient." "The system itself," the Avenger said, "reality has become aware of its own repetition, and it no longer wants to obey." Varun felt the deck shift beneath him. The hum of the engines grew into a low growl. The walls began to ripple, as though the ship itself were breathing. He stumbled back, drawing a sign of warding. "What's happening?" The Avenger stepped from the pod, his body flickering between human and machine, between flesh and data. "The cycle is rewriting not to reset, but to evolve. Humanity has learned to remember between lives, and now it seeks to escape the loop." "Escape?" Varun whispered. "How? By destroying the anchor." Through the floor plating, light began to pulse, pure, blinding white. The Avenger looked down at it with quiet reverence. "This ship is the anchor," he said, "the origin point of every cycle. If it dies, the loop dies, but so does everything else tethered to it." "Meaning, every version of you, every echo, every world that ever existed within the recall." Varun's mind reeled. "And if we do nothing?" The Avenger turned his gaze upon him. "Then cycle 28 begins, and the pattern continues, again and again, until the universe collapses under the weight of its own memory." He took a step forward, his voice lowering to a whisper. "The decision has always been yours, Inquisitor. You just never remember making it." Images flooded Varun's mind, flashes of every timeline before this one, standing in the chrono, crypt, weapon raised, watching the Emperor dissolve into light, hearing Ireva's scream echo through eternity, pulling the trigger that ended everything. He saw himself die, reborn, die again, a soul trapped in service to a cause that never ended. And now, for the 27th time, he was here. The same choice, the same man, the same impossible question. The ship groaned, the pulse quickened. Outside, the stars twisted, folding in on themselves. Varun could see glimpses of the other versions, himself across countless cycles, each one frozen mid-choice, each one believing he was the first. He looked at the Avenger. "If I destroy the ship, everything ends." "Yes. And if I don't?" The Avenger's expression softened. "Then you'll wake again, and so will I." Silence. Varun looked down at his chronometer, the same cursed time glowing back at him. 05:20:26, the moment of choice, the fixed point in every cycle. He whispered, "You said the system learned to remember. What about you? Do you remember every time?" The Avenger's gaze darkened. "Yes, every failure, every death, every time you chose wrong. And what if this time I choose differently? Then perhaps," the Avenger said, "we both end together." Varun holstered his weapon. Instead, he reached out, pressing his palm against the pulsing floor. The ship responded, light surging upward like liquid fire. The Avenger watched, unmoving. "Tell me," Varun said, his voice steady now, "if this is the 27th cycle, what happens to the 28th? The Avenger smiled, faintly, almost human. "That, Inquisitor, depends on whether you believe in redemption. The deck burst with light. The sound of engines became a chorus, not mechanical, but alive, like a cathedral breathing in unity. The Avenger extended his hand, and for the first time, Varun took it. Together, they stepped into the radiance. The ship screamed, the loop trembled. The fabric of time itself fractured into 1,000 shards of memory, and somewhere, far beyond the stars, something new began to stir. In the void that followed, there was no sound, no stars, only the faint echo of a heartbeat, one pulse every 8 seconds. Then a voice, faint and familiar, whispered through the darkness, Cycle 28, initializing. But this time, there was something different. No May, no 2026, no date at all, only one word, carved into the code of creation itself. What would you do if everything you believed was real turned out to be a lie? Not just a lie told by men, but a lie written into the very structure of reality itself. That was the question facing humanity now, standing on the edge of a universe that had no memory of the Imperium. No emperor, no throne, no recall. Ireva was the first to awaken. She opened her eyes to a sky unlike any she had seen before, deep violet with veins of molten light running across it. The twin suns were young, fierce, and untempered, casting long shadows that twisted unnaturally. Mountains rose like shards of crystal. Oceans shimmered in colors her mind could not name, and the air hummed. It sang. Her body no longer carried the echoes of 1,000 cycles. She was free, but alone, and the freedom carried a weight she had never felt before. The Avenger stood beside her. He was no longer the soldier, the weapon, or the anchor of time. He had become something else entirely, a guardian, a witness, a guide. "This is the edge," he said. "Beyond here there are no loops, no corrections, no cycles. Humanity begins again, for real this time." Ireva stared at him. And the Emperor? The Avenger shook his head, a fragment of myth, nothing more. The one who shaped you before, he does not exist here. You are the architects now. But freedom had a price. As they explored the new world, Ireva began to feel it, a presence beneath the surface. Vast, ancient, and patient. The remnants of something older than mankind itself. Not a god, not a demon, but something primal. Something that had been waiting through all the cycles, through every recall, waiting for the moment when humanity would finally step outside the loop. The Avenger's voice was grim. "You are no longer the playthings of time, but you are not yet the masters. Something waits beyond this edge. It has watched every iteration of humanity, and now it knows you are free." The ground trembled beneath them, mountains fractured, oceans boiled, the sky darkened as if the universe itself were inhaling. Ireva felt the weight of every choice she had made in every life, and she understood. Freedom did not mean safety. The loops had protected humanity from extinction, from chaos, from themselves. Outside the loops there were no protections. And then it appeared, a form taller than mountains, wings stretching beyond the horizon, eyes glowing like supernova. It was neither Xenos nor human, neither flesh nor machine. It was the Watcher beyond time, a being that had observed the cycles from the shadows, waiting for the moment when humanity would claim true freedom. Its voice reverberated in the marrow of her bones. "You have learned, you have grown, you have broken the chains of the loops, but can you endure what comes next?" Ireva stood tall, feeling every heartbeat she had lived, every loop she had survived, every death she had witnessed. The Avenger stepped beside her, his form radiating certainty. "We endure," he said, "because there is no other choice." The Watcher extended a limb, or perhaps a thought, into the sky, and the universe itself shuddered. Galaxies bent, stars ignited and died in moments. The very laws of physics, trembled like strings under tension. Ireva realized then that the loops had been a cage, yes, but they had also been a shield. Now, for the first time, humanity faced the true universe, chaotic, infinite, and unyielding. She took a step forward, then we walk it, together. The Avenger inclined his head. Together, we face what the loops hid from you. And so, humanity began again, not as subjects of the Emperor, not as pawns of the recall, but as architects of their own destiny. Every memory of the cycles lingered faintly in the mind of Ireva and the Avenger, a compass to navigate the chaos of creation. The stars stretched before them, infinite and uncharted. The horizon whispered promises of discovery, danger, and evolution. And the Watcher waited, because freedom was not the end, freedom was the edge. Not free from chains, not free from authority, not free from the loops that once dictated every action, but free in a universe where the laws themselves no longer favor you, where every choice could mean creation or annihilation. That was the trial humanity now faced. Ireva and the Avengers stood at the base of a colossal monolith that had erupted from the fractured plains of their new world. It was black as void, yet shimmered with colors that should not exist. The Watcher beyond time hovered above, its form impossible to describe, neither solid nor ethereal, yet wholly present. Its gaze, or what passed for a gaze, pierced the soul, stripping away pretense, lie, and instinct. "You are unbound," the Watcher said. Its voice resonated in multiple frequencies at once, speaking to mind, body, and spirit. You are no longer subject to the cycles, yet you do not know freedom. To wield it, you must be tested. Ireva clenched her fists. Test us, we are ready. The Avenger's eyes narrowed. Remember, Ireva, it does not judge morality, only capacity, only survival, only the strength to endure the infinite unknown. The monolith fractured, and the sky above split into mirrors of possibility. Each reflected a different version of humanity, some victorious, some enslaved, some extinct. The Watcher extended a tendril of energy, touching the mirrors one by one. Each choice you have made in the cycles has brought you here. Each echo of failure remains within you. You must prove you can act without predestination. Ireva felt her mind stretch across time, glimpses of past cycles of the Avenger, of Varun, of Ireva herself, flashing in 1,000 permutations. Every failure, every looped death, every iteration of Doomsday pressed against her consciousness. The weight was unbearable. "Stand," the Watcher commanded, "and decide." The first test came as vision, humanity rising under the guidance of Ireva and the Avenger. Cities of shining steel, ships of power, armies forged with knowledge of cycles past. Yet the stars were bleeding. Reality cracked in their expansion. Planets collapsed into themselves, suns exploded. Every victory carried a shadow of ruin. "You seek to create," the Watcher said, "yet creation carries destruction. Can you bear the cost?" Ireva looked to the Avenger. "We cannot protect everyone," she said. "We cannot fix the universe, but we can guide it. We can endure what the loops feared we could survive." The mirrors shattered into shards of light. Each shard reflected another choice, another potential failure. A universe where humanity faltered at the first step, where ambition birthed annihilation. Ireva's voice rose above the whispers, "Then we choose anyway." The second test was more intimate. The Watcher reached into her memory, showing her every face she had loved, every life erased by the loops. Friends, allies, innocents lost to doomsdays and resets. They screamed, begged, and wept in unison. "You carry the ghosts of the cycles," the Watcher said. "Can you act while carrying them?" Tears streaked her face. "I will carry them, and I will act anyway." The Avenger placed a hand on her shoulder. Do not let the past dictate the future. Let it guide, not bind you. The final test was silence. Time itself paused. Stars hung motionless. The wind did not move. The Watcher loomed, unblinking, unyielding. Ireva and the Avenger could feel the weight of infinity pressing against their minds. Act, it said. Ireva raised her hands, feeling the pulse of creation around her. Every cycle, every loop, every fragment of history surged toward her. She felt the Avenger beside her, steady, constant, a sentinel through the ages. And then she made a choice. Not to reset, not to control, not to obey. She chose to let humanity decide itself, unbound by loops, unprotected by cycles, unanchored by time. The Watcher tilted, its impossible form bending. You have understood. It said, freedom is not control, freedom is responsibility, and you have accepted it. Reality sighed. The stars moved once more, the monolith crumbled, the mirrors of possibility dissolved, leaving only the real world untested, uncertain, yet alive. Humanity now existed truly for the first time, not as a pawn, not as a cycle, but as a species facing infinite possibilities. Ireva looked at the Avenger. We did it. The loops are gone. He nodded. But the universe remains, and it is not kind. The loops protected you. Now you must survive without them. A soft wind carried the whisper of the Watcher, fading into the distance. Remember, the edge is freedom. The edge is responsibility. Walk it wisely. Ireva and the Avenger stood together at the dawn of this new universe. Behind them, the cycles lay shattered. Before them, a horizon of infinite uncertainty stretched, a challenge humanity had never truly faced. And yet, for the first time, they were free to meet it on their own terms. Not merely to guide, not simply to protect, but to craft the very essence of humanity in a universe that no longer bends loops, resets, or divine correction. That was the burden now resting on the shoulders of Ireva and the Avenger. The world beneath them was young, yet alive with possibility. Oceans churned with energy, mountains shifted imperceptibly, and the sky shimmered with streaks of cosmic light that hinted at forces beyond comprehension. Humanity had awakened, scattered across continents, unbound by the cycles, but naive, fragile, and unaware of the dangers lurking beyond the edges of their new reality. Ireva surveyed the first settlements, small clusters of humans adapting to the strange new world, learning to survive without the memory of loops, without the instinctive knowledge the recall had once provided. They struggled, yes, but they also dreamed, and that was precisely the point. We cannot protect them as the loops once did. The Avenger said, but we can teach them to survive, to grow, to become something greater than before. And if they fail, Ireva asked, her voice steady but tinged with fear. Then we watch, and we learn. The Avenger replied, freedom is not safe. It is earned through struggle, not guaranteed by cycles. The first step was subtle. Ireva and the Avenger began leaving hints, knowledge embedded in dreams, tools hidden in the soil, symbols engraved in the architecture of settlements. They did not intervene directly, for that would risk turning humanity into a puppet once more. Instead, they nudged them, like gardeners planting seeds and allowing the wind and rain to determine which would grow. They taught them the art of cooperation, the importance of curiosity, and the value of sacrifice. They guided without being seen, shaping humanity not through command, but through inspiration. And in the shadows, something watched. The Watcher beyond time had not left. It lingered, observing from a distance, studying Ireva and the Avenger. Its presence was no longer judgmental, but analytical. It had tested them, and they had passed, yet its curiosity remained. You have freed them, the Watcher whispered across the void, a sound felt rather than heard. But freedom without direction can destroy as easily as cycles. Can you endure the consequences of your choices? Ireva's answer was firm. We will endure. We have no choice but to endure. As decades passed, humanity began to change. The scattered tribes built cities, explored the stars, and developed science and art in ways both familiar and alien. Wars still occurred for ambition, for survival, for ideology, but now victory and failure were shaped by merit, not predestination. The Avenger observed quietly, cataloging outcomes, learning alongside humanity. Ireva traveled between the great civilizations, planting ideas, guiding leaders, ensuring that knowledge survived without interference from cycles or divine mandates. Together, they became the architects of destiny, guardians not of order, but of potential. But freedom attracted attention. Beyond the stars, beyond the known void, ancient forces stirred. Entities older than the Watcher, more patient than the Avenger, began to notice the new pattern of humanity, unpredictable, adaptive, alive. They whispered to each other through cosmic currents, debating whether such a species should exist, unbound by loops or divine control. One such entity, a being of pure cosmic entropy, cast its gaze toward the young human worlds. Its form was indescribable, yet its intention was clear: interference. The Avenger turned to Ireva. "The cycles may be gone," he said, "but this universe has rules we do not yet know. We must prepare them, not for survival alone, but for evolution." "And if they fail?" Ireva asked. "They will not," he replied. "We will ensure that they rise strong enough to face what even the Watcher cannot predict." The next generations would inherit the universe shaped by freedom, guided only by the wisdom and foresight of Ireva and the Avenger. Humanity's story would no longer be written by cycles, by the Emperor, or by recall. It would be written by choice, struggle, and the courage to endure the unknown. And somewhere beyond the stars, the ancient entities waited, testing the limits of a species that had finally learned to walk the edge of destiny without chains. Ireva looked to the horizon, toward a rising sun that painted the world in golden light. The Avenger stood beside her, a sentinel through the ages, a guide who had survived 27 cycles to reach this moment. "Then we begin," Ireva said. "Yes," the Avenger replied, "we begin, and humanity writes its own future. What does it mean to face a threat older than the stars? Not a war fought with armies or weapons, but a force that transcends comprehension, a presence that exists outside time, beyond physics, beyond morality." Humanity, finally free from the loops, had never truly encountered something that could not be reasoned with. Until now, the skies above the largest human colony, Nova Terra, fractured, not with fire or lightning, but with a subtle distortion, as if the universe itself were inhaling and exhaling, folding in on itself. Ships vanished mid-flight, cities flickered, existing and not existing simultaneously. The air hummed with a frequency that tore at the mind. Ireva stood atop the tallest tower, the Avenger beside her, both calm in the chaos. "It has come," he said simply. "What is it?" she asked, voice steady despite the quiver in her chest. "Something older than the Watcher," the Avenger replied. "Something that does not see cycles, does not recognize loops. It only sees potential, and it seeks to test it." The entity manifested as a colossal form in the void above the planet, not flesh, not machine, but pure energy and entropy. Its presence warped reality. Stars blinked in and out, light bent around it, and space itself seemed to ripple like water. Every human on the planet felt the weight of its gaze, and for the first time, fear was universal. Ireve stepped forward. Why here? Why now? The Avengers' eyes narrowed. Because humanity is no longer predictable. It remembers the loops. It evolves, and that is dangerous. The being's voice, if it could be called that, resonated across the minds of every human on Terra. You have been given freedom, but freedom comes with reckoning. Survive, or be undone. The first wave of the reckoning was subtle but deadly. Cities collapsed under distortions in reality. Time fractured, causing people to experience days, weeks, and years in moments. Entire ecosystems flickered in and out of existence. Those who resisted the entropy were thrown into void-like pockets of non-existence. Ireve and the Avenger moved swiftly. Where the Avenger stabilized the environment, Ireve inspired humanity to act, teaching them to adapt to the incomprehensible physics of their world. Every decision, every choice, every act of courage became a lesson, a test imposed not by loops, but by the raw logic of the universe itself. Across the globe, humanity responded. Colonies reorganized, survival tactics emerged almost instinctively, and innovations appeared that even the Avenger had not anticipated. Communities learned to manipulate entropy itself, bending light, controlling gravity, and synchronizing their minds to resist the distortion. The reckoning continued, relentless and impartial. Yet for every collapse, humanity rose. For every failure, they adapted. The entity above observed, intrigued. Interesting, it murmured, a species free of cycles, yet capable of resilience. Will they endure? Ireve realized the key. The loops gave humanity survival through repetition. She said, but now, our strength lies in choice and adaptation. We do not repeat, we evolve. The Avenger nodded. Then this is the true test, not a cycle to reset, not a loop to correct. This is reality itself, judging whether humanity is worthy of its freedom. The entity struck again. Reality tore open in jagged rifts. Entire continents vanished for minutes at a time. Humans who fell into the rifts returned changed, stronger, faster, wiser, but haunted by visions of the universe's raw design. The Avenger guided them, channeling the entropy into constructive forms. Ireve inspired them, instilling hope where logic alone could not prevail. Choice became their shield. Adaptation became their weapon. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the entity paused. Its gaze shifted to Ireve and the Avenger. You have endured longer than expected, it said. But freedom is not granted, it is earned. Humanity has survived this trial, yet the universe is infinite. Challenges will continue, as they always have. Will you persist? Ireve lifted her head, her resolve unshaken. We will persist. Not because of cycles, not because of loops, but because it is the only way to survive and to thrive. The Avenger placed his hand on her shoulder. Then let them see the next dawn. Let humanity step fully into the universe it was meant to inhabit. The entity's form began to fade, leaving behind a void of quiet energy, a reminder that the reckoning was not over, only paused. Humanity had passed the first trial, but eternity held countless more. Ireve looked out over Terra. Cities rebuilt themselves at unprecedented speeds. Humans adapted, they innovated, they thrived, free yet tested. The Avenger observed silently. This is only the beginning. They are no longer children of cycles. They are architects, and the universe will challenge them at every step. Ireve nodded. Then we will teach them not just to survive, but to choose every single time. The first true dawn of humanity unbound had arrived. The reckoning had proven one thing: free will, coupled with guidance and resilience, could shape the course of destiny in ways no loop or cycle ever could. What lies beyond the edge of all known existence? For 27 cycles, humanity had been confined first by loops, then by the recall, then by the guidance of Inquisitors and Avenger-class machines. Now, truly free, the stars were no longer a distant dream. They were a challenge, a promise, and a test all at once. Ireva and the Avenger stood aboard the first human archship to breach the void, a vessel of living steel, psychic resonance, and engineered ingenuity beyond anything from the cycles. Humanity had adapted quickly, learning to thrive under conditions that had destroyed countless civilizations before. And yet, the stars whispered secrets of their own. Across the cosmos, they encountered remnants of civilizations untouched by cycles. Worlds where evolution had taken strange, unpredictable paths. Beings whose forms were impossible to describe, some of pure thought, others of energy and matter intertwined. They did not speak the languages of humanity, nor understand the morality imposed by millennia of cycles. They were infinite, and they were watching. Ireva observed the first contact carefully. "We are not gods," she said softly, "but we are not children anymore. We carry memory, choice, and resilience. That is our power." The Avenger nodded. Cycles taught humanity repetition. Freedom teaches creativity. Survival now depends on both. The first challenge came from a star system where gravity itself shifted unpredictably. Planets folding into themselves, stars vanishing into invisible voids. Human fleets adapted, creating navigation systems guided by instinct and imagination rather than cycles or pre-programmed logic. The second challenge was more profound. Contact with the luminous architects, beings older than the Watcher, who existed as collective consciousness spanning multiple dimensions. They tested humanity not with weapons, but with dilemmas, moral paradoxes, temporal puzzles, and crises where every decision risked annihilation. Ireva stood before the luminous architects, calm yet aware of the stakes. "We are free," she said. "Not because we survived cycles, not because we were protected. We are free because we choose to endure." The architects studied her. "Choice," they intoned, "is the rarest force in the universe. You have proven your worth, but the universe is infinite. Its trials never end." Meanwhile, the Avenger worked alongside humanity's engineers and scholars, teaching them to manipulate physics, time perception, and energy flows, not to dominate, but to survive. Humanity's creativity, honed over 27 cycles of loops and tests, blossomed in this untamed cosmos. They constructed cities in orbit around stars, fleets that traversed wormholes, and machines that could anticipate probabilities rather than obey instructions. Humanity was no longer reactive. It was proactive, evolving faster than any other known species. Yet, the infinite horizon carried subtle warnings. Echoes of the loops remained in the fabric of reality, places where time stuttered, where stars blinked in and out of existence, and where entities older than galaxies lurked. The Avenger turned to Ireva. "Even here, free from loops, we are tested. The universe is alive, and it is patient. Our children must learn not just to survive, but to shape their destiny without guidance." Ireva nodded, eyes fixed on the endless stars. "Then we teach them, we guide them, not as masters, but as witnesses, as guardians, as catalysts for evolution." Humanity began to expand across the infinite horizon. They discovered civilizations in forms and concepts previously unimagined, encountering wonders and horrors alike. Each encounter was a lesson, each star a teacher, and each choice an echo that resonated through the fabric of the universe. The Avenger, constant and vigilant, continued his silent role no longer as weapon, anchor, or recall, but as observer, protector, and teacher. Ireva, carrying the memory of 7 cycles, became humanity's moral compass, guiding not with dominance but with the wisdom of survival and the courage of choice. At the edge of a newly forming galaxy, Ireva looked out into the void. The loops are gone, the reckoning has passed, humanity is truly free. The Avengers' voice was steady. Freedom is not the end. It is the beginning, the infinite horizon. And whatever comes, humanity will face it, not as pawns, not as cycles, but as architects of their own destiny. Above them, the stars shimmered infinite, untamed, alive. Humanity's story was no longer predetermined. It was written by choice, struggle, and courage. And in that vastness, anything was possible. The final lesson of the loops, the recalls, the Avenger, and the Watcher had been clear. The universe does not yield. It does not forgive. It does not protect. But it does allow those brave enough to endure to carve their legacy into the infinite fabric of reality. Ireva and the Avenger stood together, looking forward, knowing the infinite horizon was theirs to explore, challenge, and ultimately define. Humanity was no longer bound. Humanity was no longer controlled. Humanity was alive. What becomes of a species when it is truly free? Not free from chains, cycles, or divine design, but free from every safety net, every correction, every predestined path. Humanity had survived the loops, endured the reckoning, and crossed into the infinite horizon. Now, it faced the ultimate question: what will it do with freedom itself? Centuries had passed. Humanity had spread across countless star systems, building civilizations that defied imagination. Each world reflected a fragment of its people's creativity, resilience, and moral evolution. No empire dominated. No cycle dictated the future. Every decision, from governance to warfare, from exploration to philosophy, was entirely human, entirely chosen. Ireva, now revered as the first witness, moved among these civilizations not as a ruler, but as a guide. She taught patience, strategy, and the courage to act even when the outcome was uncertain. The Avenger moved in parallel, his presence a constant reminder of the lessons learned through millennia. Survival requires vigilance, wisdom, and adaptability. But freedom alone did not bring peace. Across the infinite void, entities older than galaxies, some that had tested humanity during the reckoning, others entirely new, began to watch. They were forces beyond morality or comprehension, drawn to the species that had survived every cycle and now acted without restraint. The Avenger observed the phenomena, his voice steady. The universe tests all life. Humanity has passed every trial imposed by loops, by the Watcher, and by entropy itself. Now the true challenges begin, challenges that cannot be predicted, cannot be corrected, and cannot be escaped. Ireva's eyes scanned the horizon of stars. Then let us prepare them, not to fear the infinite, but to face it. The first contact was subtle. Star systems began sending signals not in languages, but in mathematical resonance, patterns impossible to interpret without precise cognition. Humanity responded with ingenuity, creating cognitive arrays that could decode and understand these signals. Slowly, they realized that the universe itself was alive, a network of thought, energy, and possibility, and they were participants, not spectators. With guidance from Ireva and the Avenger, humanity began to interact, adapt, and influence these cosmic systems. They learned diplomacy with entities whose existence defied comprehension. They negotiated survival, exchange of knowledge, and coexistence with civilizations that had existed outside time itself. And yet, the lessons of the past cycles remained ingrained. Humanity acted with caution, respect, and wisdom. They remembered the loops, the recalls, the reckonings not as shackles, but as a foundation upon which to build real choice. Every decision carried weight. Every action rippled through the fabric of the infinite horizon. Freedom, Ereva whispered, is not mere liberation. It is responsibility, a responsibility humanity had finally earned. The Avengers stood beside her, silent and vigilant. Cycles gave them repetition. The reckoning gave them resilience. The infinite horizon gives them destiny, not as rulers, but as stewards of their own evolution. In the centuries that followed, humanity evolved further than any cycle could have predicted. Cities floated among stars, powered by energy drawn directly from the veins of the cosmos. Fleets of exploration ventured into unknown dimensions, encountering life forms and forces beyond imagination. Art, science, and philosophy flourished in ways no cycle could contain, and through it all, Ereva and the Avenger guided subtly as mentors, guardians, and witnesses. They did not impose, they did not dictate. They observed, advised, and ensured that humanity remained true to the lessons of freedom, courage, choice, and responsibility. Finally, Ereva gazed upon a new generation of humans, unshackled, fearless, and unbound. The Avenger's presence was beside her, steady as ever. "Do you think they are ready?" she asked softly. The Avenger nodded. "They have survived cycles, the recall, the reckoning, and the infinite horizon itself. Humanity is ready not to be led, not to be guided, but to choose their own destiny at every turn." Ereva smiled. Then the legacy begins, truly begins. The stars stretched infinitely before them, shining with possibilities, challenges, and the promise of unknown wonders. Humanity, for the first time, was free and fully responsible for the universe it now called home.